Greetings, students of class 9. We have just been covering the chapter, Why Do We Fall Ill? And this is a very, very appropriate time for this chapter to be taught because we are into a very, very exciting phase of medical history. After having been victimized for almost 8 months by this massive pandemic of SARS-CoV-19, which otherwise has been known as COVID-19, the world is very optimistic with the invention and the making of 4 vaccines, which should give us relief from this great disturbing pandemic. The 4 vaccines which are now in the pipeline, they are the Pfizer, the AstraZeneca, the Sputnik, and the Moderna. These vaccines have been made on a technique which is called the mRNA technique. So, going back to your chapter, why do we fall ill? You had studied that it is possible for our body to fight back any disease provided we have a very, very boosted immunity. What is immunity? Immunity is the ability of our body to fight back any form of pathogen or infection. What is the physiology and the biomechanics behind the working of this immunity system? Our immunity system, that is the human immunity system, works on one single principle, and the principle is of recognition of self from non-self. Any protein that is inside our body, that belongs to our body, is the self protein. And anything that comes from outside and manages an entry inside our body is the non-self protein. Everything is given the status of non-self protein, be it a virus, be it a bacteria, be it a dust particle, be it a pollen grain. Anything not belonging to our system is non-self, and technically that is what is called an antigen. Inside our body, there are special WBCs which are called lymphocytes. These lymphocytes are also in the process of manufacturing proteins which are called antibodies. Antibodies and antigens share an antagonistic relationship. That is, the antibodies will always be killing the antigenic proteins, except that there is one catch to that. And that catch is that before the antibodies recognize their enemy, that is the antigen, they need to have an exposure so that they are very, very confident that this is the enemy antigenic protein which we all have to together destroy. To make this facility available to the lymphocytes, there is the system of introducing a very mild, a very harmless form of the antigen so that there is an identification of the antigen by the body. The moment the body is given a sensitization that an antigen is there inside, the lymphocytes will be triggered and they start making antibodies with a mind-boggling rate of 3 trillion antibody molecules per second. So high is the power of our body to make antibodies. But the catch remains, where is the exposure happening? And till the exposure happens, or till the antibodies are sensitized with one brush with the antigens, they would not work as effective fighters. And this is exactly what happens when one is vaccinated, which otherwise is also called as the process of immunization. These current vaccines against COVID 19, which are soon going to be available to the general public, have a special way of working because they are super vaccines made on the philosophy that if exposed once, the body will be able to create its own defensive armed forces of the antibodies. So, what is happening in these particular vaccines, which are going to be effective against COVID 19, is that the vaccination is such that it will enter the body, enter the cell, command the DNA of the cell, and make the DNA of the cell produce proteins which are similar to the viral proteins. So it's a kind of war strategy that instead of bringing the real enemy, create replicas of the enemy so that the soldiers know here they are and this is what they are going to look like. These proteins, which are being made, they will be instantly treated as antigens by the fighting lymphocyte cells of the body. And there they know that we are here to make antigens which will defeat these antigenic proteins whom we have already experienced, and this is their structure. With that, they create a whole battery of antibodies which are ready for use should the vaccine work in the system, which is very, very definite. They will work in the system, and our bodies will have a ready battery, a ready go down of antibodies. And should the virus dare to enter our body again, the army regiments of antibodies are ready to fight for our system, and thus, we are very confident that COVID 19 will be beaten back by these vaccines which have come into our world, and very soon they will be available to the general public. Thank you for your attention, dear listeners.